Hello one, hello all, I'm CP. Today we're doing the top 5 Jasons. This is the second of 3 special Friday the 13th themed videos for the week of the 13th. You know, we get 2 Friday the 13ths in 2018. You'd think I'd spread the material out a bit, but fuck it. It should go without saying that Pamela Voorhees is incredible. If I could put her on this list, I would, but
Jason was my son, and today is his birthday.
Betsy Palmer, incredible work for the 3rd act of Friday the 13th, but she's not a Jason, nor will I have Ari from part 1. There's a little spoiler. Part 1 won't be counted in this selection. And I guess technically you won't count part 5, but that's getting ahead of ourselves. At this point, you're like, well, that leaves but 3 people. Without further ado, my number 5 Jason in the Friday the 13th series. Derek Mears from the Friday the 13th 2009, the remake, the reboot, the rehash, the greatest hits of 1 through 4 redone, whatever you want to call it. Derek Mears does a hell of a job. I was quite in a few Friday the 13th fan club, fan board, message board, whatever the hell you want to call it. See, back before Facebook and stuff, you went to an actual web page and voiced your opinion, much like Reddit. I guess it's still out there. Never mind. Well, the big thing back then was Derek Mears. His version of Jason was running, and that was no. That was a big no-no. I think, if not for that first 20 minutes of that Friday the 13th, he may not even be on this list, but just absolutely menacing. Again, that opening 20 minutes really weighs down my opinion because that was just a savage portrayal of Jason. Like there's one scene that's like infamous in all the trailers where what's her face? She's running backwards and using her hands to scoot herself backwards, and Jason, while he's taking somebody to task, he turns around. But what's incredible about the thing about these Jasons is proper English inserted here, is you kind of really have to emote with your body. There's not much you can do with your face. And the one thing that got to me was the speed in which he thrusts his shoulders around and follows with his head. It's not that big a deal, but it was just so menacing. I remember in the trailer thinking, oh, this dude's fucked up. We're in for a treat. And I was right. But then the rest of the movie happened. Again, that first 20 minutes is absolutely incredible. Other than that, he did a fine job, but that prologue of Friday the 13th is just award-worthy. If it cut off at the title, I might have him higher, like way higher. But alas, there was another 80 minutes after that with some stupendous nipple placement, and that weighs this decision down. On to number 4. Stephen Daskovich and Warrington Jillette in Friday the 13th Part 2. I list both actors because there's scenes that they're both playing something that I appreciate in that movie. You'd be surprised. There's a lot of Friday the 13th films with multiple actors playing Jason, whether it be a dude for face shots and a dude for stunts. Turns out that Warrington Jillette, who did the unmasked Jason through a window scene, he couldn't handle stunts, which, whatever. And to counter that, you have Daskovich, who the infamous scene with Mother Is Talking to You, the first moment of head cock that
Jason, Mother is talking to you!
Curious, confused look, that was first done in Part 2. That was done by Daskovich. Planted a seed because it kept getting used from there forth. And I just think it was a unique twist and added some innocence to the character. And I don't know, perhaps things like that, the humanization of Jason is why I love this series so much, but it started there. It gets much more credit from me than perhaps others, but yeah. So for number 3, I'm gonna lose some of you here. Richard Brooker from Friday the 13th, Part 3. A lot of people would say Kane Hodder is the quintessential Jason. I would say that when you think of Jason, it really starts right here in Part 3. Just a towering figure. Pretty much covers everything that somebody would love about Jason. He's a big dude. He runs in Part 3, and gets some unmasked time. That's just absolutely menacing. With the exception of that weird window thing. I guess Jason doesn't know how windows work. I wonder if that was direction or acting, but really, it was menacing but silly at the same time. There's not much to say about Richard Brooker. I would assume that if you go out and check Cody Leach's list, he'll probably have him higher and have a bit more to say about him. I'm a bit of a homer when it comes to Friday the 13th and my Jasons, but incredible portrayal. I'm not taking anything away from it. I just have other preferences. Number 2, the combination of C.J. Graham and Dan Bradley from Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives. I include Dan Bradley because Dan Bradley was apparently a little overweight or a little chubby or not tall, he just wasn't the look of Jason after a couple of days, if not a day of filming. But I liked the work that he did with his face. He's in the paintball scene where he gets shot in the chest and looks down and gives a bit of a comedic take. I appreciated that. There's a couple of things there that, anything in that wood scene, that's Dan Bradley. Everything else apparently is C.J. Graham. C.J. Graham, again, going back to the head tilting thing, there's a sex scene. C.J. Graham does the innocence thing, the Jason who's still perplexed and doesn't quite understand some adult things well. Other than that, the hulking mass is not quite Richard Brooker, but I guess because he's zombie Jason, Tom McLaughlin has gone on to say this, that he was undead and there's a bit more power to him. And you got that, and C.J. Graham just portrayed that really well, crushing people's heads, snapping people backwards like lawn chairs. Just brilliant. But I think one person did it better. Keep in mind, Jason Lives is like my favorite Friday the 13th by a bit, so this is saying something. Number 1, Ted White, Friday the 13th, Part 4, the final chapter. For everything I've said about C.J. Graham, for everything I've said about Richard Brooker, Ted White is like the perfect blend of all of them. Hell, I'll even give you a blend of the guys who played in Part 2. The only thing he wasn't was fast. He wasn't very Derek Mearsy. He wasn't very Kane Hoddery. And yes, surprise, Kane Hodder isn't represented in one of my top 5. I prefer different Jasons. I don't want my undead Jason to breathe. I appreciate what he's done. It's just I like others better. I'm not saying I hate Kane Hodder, I just prefer others more. Ted White felt like a perfect blend of 3, 6, 2, just all of it. They everything that I like about the innocence, there's that moment where he's in the end like trying to grab at Tommy, who he thinks is a younger version of himself. Nice. It was a nice little touch to show innocence. Absolutely menacing at times too, where it's just him and Trish in that hallway where she decides to just bail and jump out a window. He had it all, and it's not like he did any one thing 5 stars. It was just a bunch of 4 stars across the way. Where, other guys in this list, I would say, well, their blank is 5 stars, but this is 3 and 2 and whatever. It's just a healthy mix. Ted White just does everything really, really well, and I certainly appreciate it. And of course, you're welcome to disagree. I can't wait for the backlash. By all means, comment down below. Let me know what your top 5 are. Keep it civil down there. We're all fans. Anyway, so that's it for this top 5. Coming up shortly, unless you're watching this in the future, there's the Friday the 13th countdown, which I rank the Friday the 13th films from bottom to top, which is also on this channel on Friday the 13th, April 2018. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up, or just give it a thumbs up for Kane Hodder's sake. How about that? My Patreon info is down below, and we'll see you next time. Have a Friday the 13th.